Today is day 2 for the Come Follow Me study for this week, October 20th through the 26th. O God, where art thou? Doctrine and Covenants 121 through 123. Tuesday, October 21st, 2025, Doctrine and Covenants 121, 11 through 25. From January through March 1839, many of the saints traveled east across the Mississippi River to Quincy, Illinois. The Quincy residents welcomed the church members warmly, providing them with food, shelter, and work. Immediately, church leaders began searching for potential settlement sites for the saints. A land speculator named Isaac Galland offered to sell large tracts of land to the church in Ohio, as well as in Commerce, Illinois, and church leaders wrote to the prophet Joseph Smith, who was in Liberty Jail at the time, about the possibility of purchasing this land. On March 20th, 1839, and again on approximately March 22nd, 1839, the prophet responded to church leaders by writing lengthy letters that included his thoughts and instructions regarding the potential land purchases. Read Doctrine and Covenants 121, 11 through 25, looking for what the Lord said would happen to those who oppose his servants. Cursed are all those who raise false cries of transgression against the Lord's people. Doctrine and Covenants 121, 11 through 15. And they who do charge thee with transgression, their hope shall be blasted, and their prospect shall melt away, as the hoarfrost melteth before the burning rays of the rising sun. And also that God hath set his hand and seal to change the times and seasons, and to blind their minds, that they may not understand his marvelous workings, that he may prove them also, and take them in their own craftiness. Also because their hearts are corrupted, and the things which they are willing to bring upon others, and love to have others suffer, may come upon themselves to the very utmost, that they may be disappointed also, and their hopes may be cut off. And not many years hence, that they and their prosperity shall be swept from under heaven, saith God, that not one of them is left to stand by the wall. Elder Heber J. Grant said, "Our enemies have never done anything that has injured this work of God, and they never will. I look ahead, I read, I reflect. I ask the question, where are the men of influence, of power and prestige, who have worked against the Latter-day Saints? Where is the reputation for honor and courage of the governors of Missouri and Illinois, the judges, and all others who have come here to Utah on special missions against the Latter-day Saints? Where are their people to do them honor? They cannot be found. Where are the men who have assailed this work? Where is their influence? They have faded away like dew before the sun. We need have no tears, we Latter-day Saints. God will continue to sustain this work. He will sustain the right. If we are loyal, if we are true, if we are worthy of this gospel of which God has given us a testimony, there is no danger that the world can ever injure us. We can never be injured by any mortals except ourselves. Doctrine and Covenants 121:16. Cursed are all those that shall lift up the heel against mine anointed, saith the Lord, and cry they have sinned, when they have not sinned before me, saith the Lord, but have done that which was meet in mine eyes, and which I commanded them. In the inspired words given to the prophet Joseph Smith during his imprisonment in Liberty Jail, the Lord declared several consequences for those who had lost faith and had actively sought to destroy God's anointed servant. During the Last Supper, Jesus Christ announced that one of his disciples would betray him. He quoted from a passage in the Old Testament, "Yea, mine own familiar friend, in whom I trusted, which did eat of my bread, hath lifted up his heel against me." The phrase "hath lifted up his heel against me" describes a person who has decided to openly oppose or fight against the Lord and his work, or to turn his or her back and walk away from it. The use of this phrase in John 13:18 referred to the treachery of Judas, who betrayed Jesus Christ into the hands of his enemies. As recorded in Doctrine and Covenants 121, the Lord used the same phrase when referring to the apostates who had turned against the prophet Joseph Smith and were seeking his destruction. The prophet Joseph Smith explained, "From apostates the faithful have received the severest persecutions. Judas was rebuked and immediately betrayed his Lord into the hands of his enemies, because Satan entered into him. There is a superior intelligence bestowed upon such as obey the gospel with full purpose of heart, which, if sinned against, the apostate is left naked and destitute of the Spirit of God, and he is in truth nigh unto cursing, and his end is to be burned. When once that light which was in them is taken from them, they become as much darkened as they were previously enlightened. And then, no marvel, if all their power shall be enlisted against the truth, and they, Judas-like, seek the destruction of those who were their greatest benefactors. President Boyd K. Packer of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles cautioned church members about individuals today who, like the apostates in Ohio and Missouri, fight against God's kingdom. The Lord warned us of those few in the church who have professed to know my name and have not known me, and have blasphemed against me in the midst of my house. Some few within the church openly, or perhaps far worse, in the darkness of anonymity, approach their leaders in their wards, in stakes, and in the church, seeking to make them an offender for a word, as Isaiah said. Elder George Q. Cannon taught the saints should not imagine that because they know the truth and the work of God at the present time, that they will always know these things and therefore be able to stand. If they lose the Holy Spirit through their transgressions, from that moment their knowledge respecting the work of God ceases to increase and becomes dead. A short time only elapses before such persons deny the faith. They may not deny that the work was ever true, or that the elders were ever the servants of God, but they will place a limit and say, up to such a time the work was true, and the elders were all right, but after that they went astray. That very period being the time at which they themselves had committed some act or acts to forfeit the Spirit of God and kill the growth of that knowledge which they had bestowed upon them. This has been the case in numerous instances in the past. It is plain that it is they who have transgressed, and therefore driven the Spirit of the Lord from them. And at the very time they say the church of God strayed, they themselves were guilty of transgression. President Joseph F. Smith said, "Again, I repeat that it is a serious thing for a man holding a membership in this church to say in his heart or openly that these men holding the keys of the kingdom have sinned, when they have not sinned, and caused dissension, if it is in his power to do so among his brethren. The judgments of the Lord will overtake him. He will be brought in question before the Lord, and shall be cast out, and find his place among the unbelievers. And those who flattereth him, and encouraged him to raise up his heel against his brethren, will turn from him and leave him to his shame." Doctrine and Covenants 121:17. But those who cry transgression do it because they are the servants of sin, and are the children of disobedience themselves. The prophet Joseph Smith said, "The enemies of this people will never get weary of their persecution against the church until they are overcome. I expect they will array everything against me that is in their power to control, and that we shall have a long and tremendous warfare. He that will war the true Christian warfare against the corruptions of these last days will have wicked men and angels of devils, and all the infernal powers and darkness continually arrayed against him. When wicked and corrupt men oppose, it is a criterion to judge if a man is warring the Christian warfare. When all men speak evil of you falsely, blessed are ye. Shall a man be considered bad when men speak evil of him? No. If a man stands and opposes the world of sin, he may expect to have all wicked and corrupt spirits arrayed against him." President Joseph F. Smith said, "It is not necessary, perhaps, for me to say that there never was a time since the organization of the church when it was more necessary than it is at present for all the Latter-day Saints to live their religion and to keep the commandments of the Lord, to purge from their midst iniquity, folly, and sin, and the transgression of the commandments and the laws of God unto them. I may add to this that perhaps there never was a time when the work of the Lord in the earth was in greater earnest or reality than it is today. As a proof of this, we need only to open our eyes and see the energy and activity of the enemies of this people at the present time. When the wicked rage and the heathen imagine a vain thing relative to this people, we may set it down as a fact that the devil is not dead, and that the work of the Lord is not dead either. They will not have the right to the priesthood, and will be damned. Doctrine and Covenants 121:18. And those who swear falsely against my servants, that they might bring them into bondage and death. The prophet Joseph Smith said, "So it is that when men's hearts become hardened and corrupt, they will more readily swear to lies than speak the truth." Doctrine and Covenants 121:19-21. Woe unto them, because they have offended my little ones. They shall be severed from the ordinances of mine house. Their bucket shall not be full, their houses and their barns shall perish, and they themselves shall be despised by those that flattered them. They shall not have right to the priesthood, nor their posterity after them, from generation to generation. The unrepentant apostates in Missouri determined that they would no longer follow the prophet of God, and therefore lost the privilege of participating in the ordinances and blessings of the priesthood. Their decision to separate themselves from God's church would eventually impact their posterity after them from generation to generation, and restrict these descendants' opportunities to enjoy the blessings of the gospel and the right to the priesthood. President Spencer W. Kimball explained how this can occur. Among church members, rebellion frequently takes the form of criticism of authorities and leaders. They speak evil of dignities and of the things that they understand not, says Peter. They complain of the programs, belittle the constituted authorities, and generally set themselves up as judges. After a while, they absent themselves from church meetings for imagined offenses, and fail to pay tithes and meet their other church obligations. In a word, they have the spirit of apostasy, which is almost always the harvest of the seeds of criticism. Such people fail to bear testimony to their descendants, destroy faith within their own homes, and actually deny the right to the priesthood to succeeding generations who might otherwise have been faithful in all things. While it is important to know that a person's choices have a significant influence on their generations after them, it should be remembered that each person is accountable for his or her own choices, and not for the choices of his or her forebears. President Joseph F. Smith stated that the infidel will impart infidelity to his children if he can. The whoremonger will not raise a pure, righteous posterity. He will impart seeds of disease and misery, if not of death and destruction, upon his offspring, which will continue upon his children and descend to his children's children in the third and fourth generation. It is perfectly natural that the children should inherit from their fathers, and if they sow the seeds of corruption, crime, and loathsome disease, their children will reap the fruits thereof. Not in accordance with God's wishes, for his wish is that men will not sin and therefore will not transmit the consequences of their sin to their children, but that they will keep his commandments and be free from sin and from entailing the effects of sin upon their offspring. But inasmuch as men will not hearken unto the Lord, but will become a law unto themselves, and will commit sin, they will justly reap the consequences of their own iniquity, and will naturally impart its fruits to their children, to the third and fourth generation. President Boyd K. Packer continued, that terrible penalty will not apply to those who try as best they can to live the gospel and sustain their leaders, nor need it apply to those who in the past have been guilty of indifference or even opposition, if they will repent, confess their transgressions, and forsake them. Doctrine and Covenants 121:22-25. It had been better for them that a millstone had been hanged about their necks, and they drowned in the depth of the sea. Woe unto all those that discomfort my people, and drive and murder and testify against them, saith the Lord of hosts. A generation of vipers shall not escape the damnation of hell. Behold, mine eyes see and know all their works, and I have in reserve a swift judgment in the season thereof, for them all. For there is a time appointed to every man according as his works shall be.